everyone, I'm Laura DeMeo Roy, and I'm a certified guide dog mobility instructor, service dog trainer, and trick trainer. Today I'm going to be talking about helpful tips when you're considering training the task of medication reminder and medication retrieve. There's a lot that goes into training these type of complex tasks, so I think this video will be really helpful in helping you create a plan before you get started, figure out what type of alert or reminder you want to use, as well as go over some important safety for your dog. Medication reminders and medication retrieves are both tasks that can be really helpful for a variety of types of service dogs, including psychiatric service dogs, migraine response dogs, medical response, and many more. Medication reminder is a task that can be used for handlers that struggle with taking medication at a certain time, while medication retrieval can be used in conjunction with a medication reminder or for handlers that are unable to get their medication when they need it at a time that may vary, such as during a medical event. Before we get started, I want to know, is this a task that you're going to be teaching your service dog? Are you going to train just the medication reminder or just the medication retrieve or both? Let me know down in the comments below. How medication reminders work. You might say, well, if you already have an alarm set, why don't you just take the meds? Speaking from experience, that's something that I personally struggle with. I spent a few months early on just not knowing whether or not I had actually taken my meds until I got a daily pill case. And then once I had done that, sometimes the alarm would go off and I would just forget, or I was busy, or basically something happened and I didn't end up taking them. So I've trained many clients in a retrieve, specifically a medication retrieve, and finally I realized that this is a task that I needed to actually train my own dog for so that I could increase my compliance with this medication that I'm supposed to take at a particular time every day. So my goal is to have my dog remind me to take my medication and then retrieve that medication so it's right there for me to take. This increases my likelihood of taking the meds, and I've actually already started the training process and have been videotaping all of my sessions, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Cueing. So when we're thinking about any behavior, we need to think about what the cue is going to be to have the dog do the thing. This behavior is typically cued by either the dog's predetermined mealtime that are timed in conjunction with the handler taking their medication, or, and I think this is an easier way to teach it, it's cued by a medication-unique alarm on the handler's phone or an alarm in their house. This same concept can be used to train your dog to remind you to do other things, such as shower, walking, eating, etc. We'll talk more about the alarm and practical advice in the tips section a little later in the video. Pick a reminder that'll be slightly annoying, but also practical in the context that you're going to use it. For instance, you may not want to teach your dog to paw or jump on you when they hear the alarm because you may be out in public and your dog's feet might be muddy or dirty. In those cases, a nose boop or a chin rest might be a better reminder cue. For my particular dog, when she hears the alarm, she runs to me and then I actually cue her to do the medication retrieve. Remember, these are two different tasks, the reminder and then the retrieve. So some people may prefer that the alarm is the cue to go and do the retrieval, but I wanted the ability to keep those things separate as necessary. So basically, I travel a lot for work and I may not have set up my room appropriately or even have the medication in the room when the alarm goes off. So I didn't want to cause frustration for my dog if she was searching around to retrieve something for me that wasn't available. So that's why I chose to separate the two things. You can absolutely do what makes the most sense for your situation and your disability. And if you've liked these tips so far, make sure you go down and boop that like button down below and subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell button. Then you get notified anytime a new video comes out, and I do a new service dog video every month. Safety. Next, we're going to talk about safety because that's an important component of training this behavior, is keeping your dog safe when we're talking about medication. The first thing that I did when training this skill is I got a locking medication container that the dog can't accidentally open. Next, you want to find a secondary container to put your medication in. So that could be a pencil case or a makeup bag that basically is going to protect the medication further from your dog. If your dog has a hard mouth, some type of hard container is best, but if your dog has generally a soft mouth and doesn't get into things, then some type of zippered bag usually works well. You could even add a large tab on the end of it so that your dog can pick it up using that tab, and that might be easier for them. Use an empty medication container when you're first starting your retrieve and you don't know how your dog is going to react to it. If they have a really hard mouth, we don't want them to accidentally break through the plastic, but you'll know a little bit more about how your dog retrieves things once you've trained a formal retrieve, which we'll talk about a little bit later. You're also going to want to train a strong automatic leave it, specifically with empty pill capsules. That way, if you accidentally drop a pill while you're trying to take it, your dog isn't going to lunge and try to grab that pill and eat it and get sick. I have a great video over on the Doggy U community on Patreon that shows an exercise to teach your dog how to do an automatic leave it with food, because that's one of the requirements for a lot of public access tests. But that same exercise and principles apply when we're talking about dropped medication in this scenario. Finally, do not leave medication in an area your dog can retrieve it until it's under stimulus control. So for me, I leave my medication in a backpack that comes everywhere with me, and that backpack hangs off of a desk that I have that can be a standing or a sitting desk. So when we're doing a training session, the desk gets lowered so that the dog has access to it, and then when we're done with that session, the desk gets raised so that the dog can no longer retrieve that medication even if they try to. This prevents any accidents before the dog is fully trained in the behavior. So if you'd like to watch full sessions of me training this behavior with my service dog, definitely check out the Doggy U community at patreon.com/doggyu, where I'm going to be posting videos of my training for the next couple of months. I'll be breaking down the behavior, showing my mistakes and what I would do differently next time. I'll show you how I pivot in the moment and also how I generalize and proof this behavior. So if that interests you, you can click on the link in the description below and join the Doggy U community for as little as $3 a month. On to the tips section. So before you start teaching a medication retrieve, make sure you have a strong formal retrieve with your dog. I typically start the formal retrieve with either a dumbbell or a wooden dowel. The retrieve in and of itself can be a complex behavior to teach, especially if you don't have a natural retrieving breed. I use a variety of methods that typically use shaping to get a strong hold and retrieve. I'm hoping to show the training of a shaped retrieve over on Patreon in the next couple months. It's important that you get the retrieve trained outside of the actual medication. We want to have a dog have a really strong positive history of reinforcement to bringing things with you, and sometimes medication bags aren't the simplest thing for them to retrieve. So if you do use a dumbbell or a dowel to start with and then generalize that to other objects, that you can make sure that the dog doesn't get frustrated while you tinker with the finer aspects of doing a retrieve, like making sure that their mouth isn't too hard or that they're rolling it around or trying to rip it or anything like that. Once you have that solid retrieve, you then move on to the actual medication, and then you can have a strong reinforcement history for that particular medication retrieved in the fashion that you want it retrieved in. Another retrieve tip that works well for some dogs is to put some treats actually in your medication bag, and then when they bring it to you, you open the bag and give them the treats. Now, some dogs this will cause frustration for, so you have to know your own dog, but it's also kind of convenient to have treats inside the retrieval bag, because then you can always reinforce your dog for bringing the medication while you're taking it. My next tip is to always put the medication in a location that you can be consistent with. I put mine in a backpack that hangs off of my desk, and that backpack goes with me no matter where I go or whenever I leave the house, so I know I always have the medication with me. Having one location where we know the medication is going to be makes it simpler for both me and my dog. This did take some training on my part for myself, because putting things back where they belong doesn't necessarily come naturally to me. Reinforcing your own behavior is highly encouraged, because dogs aren't the only ones that benefit from learning through positive reinforcement. My next tip is to spend a significant amount of time generalizing and proofing this behavior. So for instance, the other day, Cool was chewing on a marrow bone when the alarm went off. She popped right up, ran in to see me, and then retrieved the meds and came back. I made sure to reinforce heavily for this decision, because it's really hard for a dog to leave a really prized thing knowing that one of their siblings might come and take it while they're gone. These are the situations you need to train and prepare for. And I have a great exercise using Premack Principle over on the Doggy U community to help you start getting this type of behavior that you want from your dog. Next, your alarm needs to be distinct. So if you're not taking your medication first thing when you get up and that alarm goes off, you want to have a separate medication-only alarm that you can train your dog to. The way that I did it is I just ran through a bunch of the alarms on my phone, and I watched my dog to see which one she responded most readily to. And then I made sure none of my other alarms or settings on my phone used that sound. And along with that, don't set that particular alarm sound until your dog is fully proofed and trained in the behavior, if you're not going to train it every day at the time you need to take medication. Because what we don't want is your dog to ignore or become habitualized to it before you've trained it. So in the meantime, use a separate alarm sound for yourself to remind you to take the medication. And then once it's a trained behavior, or if you know that you're going to be training at the time that it would go off, then you switch over for the actual alarm that you're going to use so that it's very distinct for your dog. You can also use their meal times to your advantage. So if you generally take your medication in the morning or in the evening when you're about to feed your dog dinner, you can feed their meal right after they do the reminder and retrieve to further reinforce the behavior. Next, I want to give you a few tips about actually training this behavior and setting yourself up for success with your dog. First, do your training sessions before mealtime, and you can even potentially use some of their meal to reinforce for the behavior and then feed the remainder of the meal after your training session is over. Next, keep your training sessions short. This will increase your dog's motivation and excitement to train with you. My typical time spent on any given exercise is usually 1 to 3 minutes, with an entire training session lasting no more than 10 minutes. During those 10 minutes, I might train 3, 4, 5 different things with my dog, as well as do some little play breaks to reinforce behavior in between. So if you need to, set a timer for yourself for 1 to 3 minutes, work on the exercise for that long, and then you can always pick up and train that again later in the day. For dogs that aren't naturally reinforced by retrieving, like Labs and Goldens, it's helpful sometimes to switch it up and do like 1 rep of retrieve, 1 spin, 1 rep of retrieve, a high five. Things that your dog knows and does well, so you're mixing those in with this more difficult behavior. If you have a high energy dog or a dog that tends to mouth the retrieve item, you may want to go back and train a strong hold as part of the behavior chain of the retrieve before you move on. You also might want to practice at lower energy times of the day. The same goes for a dog that tends to be lower energy, as you want to train at those higher levels of energy points in the day so that you can be most successful. So if you like this video and want to learn more, consider joining the Doggy U community. I'll be posting an additional video over there talking about the training plan outline, as well as full training sessions for you to view. You'll also have access to 2 years worth of exclusive content, which means hundreds of private videos and live Q&As in a supportive and inclusive community of pet and service dog trainers. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, make sure you boop that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel so that you can see all of our latest videos. And if you have ideas for videos, drop them down in the comments below. And if you like this training video, you'll probably like this one too, so be sure to click on it. You all have an awesome day and happy training.